All right, we're live. We are live for episode 10. Wow, 10 episodes, 10 weeks of this stuff. And so happy to have everyone there. Happy for you to swing by in the last minute pinch, sir. Thank you.
Oh, of course. It was my honor. I love being on this show. So, second you said there was an opening,
Yeah,
how,
yeah.
how could how could I refuse?
How could you refuse? Well, I appreciated that because it literally came before I was like when the original co-host for today's scheduled episode told me. I was like, okay, I'm going to start going through a list. So I sent out a DM, and literally as I'm crafting the next one, you replied back and be like, yeah, I can do it. I'm like, well, okay then. There we go.
Yeah, no, I wasn't, I sounded douchey, but I actually do like this show, so I was happy that you asked me. Although the way I explained it now didn't necessarily seem that way, but I really did feel that way.
No, it's quite all right. Yeah, so guys out in the chat, please make sure let us know that the audio levels are good, that you can hear Price clearly, that you can hear myself clearly. Yeah, if someone but one of if either of us are too low or too high, let me know. We'll make the quick adjustments as we do our little powwow for this week. It's been an interesting week, and we got a script that's quite. I like the fact that it's a little bit more different than what we've usually had. So we'll get into that here. I'm getting it all good on 52 movies a year, and okay, so let's jump in without further ado. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Price of Reason for your second episode with us. This is awesome. Thank you so much again. Again, repeating the earlier pleasantries. Thank you so much for being here because we've got an interesting script to talk about, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on what we've discussed or what we're going to
There's
be discussing tonight.
there's certainly a lot to talk about with this script. It was I can definitely see us having a really good conversation about it.
Yes, indeed. So let's get to it. So tonight's script, ladies and gentlemen, is called The Waitlist, or it's called Waitlist, not The Waitlist, but it's Waitlist. It's from the 2021 Blacklist. It ranked number 7 with 19 votes, and the logline is a troubled millennial from small town Texas will do anything to get into her top choice law school, including murder. Price, would you please regale the audience with the synopsis?
Okay, I got this. The synopsis. Kate deferred her aspirations of becoming a lawyer when her mom got sick and passed away. Now, a few years later, in her early 20s, taking care of her lazy and meth addicted father, she's reapplying to law school in the hopes of escaping her Texas no name town for a life of fulfillment and independence. But her bright future is getting dim as rejection letters fill her mailbox. That is, until she learns she's on the wait list for Columbia Law School. But after having waited so many years thus far, Kate hatches a plan to move herself up to acceptance by removing those ahead of her by any means necessary.
Thank you for that, sir. So,
I did my impression of, how in the 90s you had these kind of commercials where there was the
like the Hallmark announcer type of guy, yeah.
yeah, Joe was just a regular guy until one day he met the woman of his dreams. Or
But
something like that, you know what I mean?
then he was turned into a dog.
Exactly.
And instead of walking her to the dates, she's walking him to the park. You know, those type, yeah. I know those types of
And he's
stories.
having a rough time.
And he's having a rough time. Yep. But
Well,
don't worry,
hopefully I
his
captured.
bark is much worse than his bite. Da, da, da. Yeah, and then there we go. It's the Shaggy Dog too.
And then there's some like cheesy song, the cheesiest song you could think of in the world.
Oh, it's like one of those like top 40s that you had in the at the time. Like that's what they always do.
Right? Like the Backstreet Boys or something like that. Something like really cheesy just shoved in there.
Yep. Oh man, yeah. Well, they still make those types of movies, but I've cut the cable cord many years ago, so I don't really see commercial ads for those these days, and don't see many commercials these days. Don't even know what's out to buy anymore. But yeah, like those those types of movies. I mean, heck, we will probably have a couple of those screenplays popping up on this show in the future, because they do, people like them, and they're successful films. In fact, this type of script that we're going to be reviewing tonight, it's definitely a type of movie that you can see being made, and it's got some similarities to a classic. And I'd refer to that being American Psycho. There's some similarities to American Psycho in this. But let's start with your initial thoughts, Price, about this screenplay. What were your first initial takeaways?
I guess, it would be easy to just flat out dismiss it and say it was bad because there's some kind of an idea here, but it may have even had potential if executed in a different way. It's just there's something about it that ultimately just doesn't work. It's as if they had an idea. It wasn't the worst idea, but once it came to writing it, they made a few mistakes that really harms their screenplay, in my opinion. And I think that's the best way for me to describe it.
Was there any one particular mistake that kind of stood out among the others?
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be even if it's a protagonist that's not really a protagonist, even if it's a main character that's evil and doing evil things, it's important that the audience kind of at least understands what's making this protagonist tick and feel some kind of empathy or connection with her, even if she's doing bad things. If you look at something like Breaking Bad, you feel empathy towards Walter White, who has cancer, and as he goes through this journey of his, he does very bad things, and you kind of let it slide because you're in it with him. But this movie doesn't get that right. It causes it brings a main character that, in my opinion, is kind of alienating. So if you don't really feel anything, any kind of empathy, anything towards her, there's nothing about her that's even mildly likable. You kind of just, it doesn't bring you along for that type of ride. If you think of, let's say, the Joker, the first one, not the weird musical one they're doing now, the first one with Joaquin Phoenix, I think that movie, you kind of felt bad for him. There was something about him that it captured your interest, even though he was doing bad things. And if this movie was going for that vibe, this screenplay, I feel that it just doesn't succeed. There were things it could have done to make it better, but it feels like when they wrote this main character, they wanted her to also be this kind of annoying modern woman somehow. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but I think that if they would have dropped the annoying modern woman bit and just had something that you kind of feel like you're in her shoes and you want what she wants so much and she's not getting it, and once she's sort of going off the rails, as she's going crazy kind of, you kind of empathize with her, but they never capture that. From the first frame until the last frame of this movie, you're just like, I don't like her at all, and I think that harms the movie. You need a character that somebody can feel anything towards. Sometimes you have a situation, just a final comment, that you have, let's say, a main character who's maybe all bad, but at least funny. You know what I mean? There's something funny and amusing. So the guy is like the biggest natural-born killers or something. You look at Woody Harrelson, he's doing the most awful things, but there's something a bit funny about his behavior. Also with Juliette Lewis. They don't have that here either, if that makes any sense.
Sure. I mean, I as I was reading the script, I found this to be more like a commentary of the millennial feminist woman. Like it's like, I'm wondering, okay, is this supposed to be a serious type of thriller, or is there supposed to be a little bit of a satire here? Because the main character is deliberately unlikable, and she doesn't take responsibility for her own actions, and this is all done very deliberately. Like, it's not accidental, and the script is in no way trying to make her on the right side, because we actually have a character that we do kind of like, and she, the writer of this screenplay, her name's Carly J. Hallman. And I will say this, even though everybody will have their own different opinions on interpretations of this, I think the use of language, the use of description, the plot beats, all those things are incredibly well crafted. Like, there's a talent to the person who's writing. It's really just the subject matter with which people might not be fully on board with. So I want to get that out of the way. Like, I don't even think I caught a spelling mistake in the script. Like, whoever, like, she wrote this script and she took very good care into having a lot of the normal throwaways that overly excited and non-disciplined writers kind of make up all the mistakes too. But what I really enjoyed about the aspect of this stuff, aside from my normal comics, because that's going to be different, especially my rating, is the fact that she takes certain tropes and sets them up for one presumption, and then she throws it back on you. And one of the best ones of that would be the character of Chad, who is a gym rat. He's in a multi-level marketing scheme, and he shows interest in the main character, Kate, who we mentioned in the synopsis. And he only shows interest in her because she's kind of mousy, but she's got a great little body, and he's just enamored with her. But he comes off at first kind of like a little bit of a douche and a creep. But then as we get to see more of him, he's actually this really kind of, not necessarily aloof, but he's a genuine guy. Like, he's not a creep. He's not a stalker. He's not, the type of dude that would put something in a girl's drink when she's not looking or anything like that. He's just a guy he's changed his life from being kind of a loser. He's his own boss to a degree, in a multi-level marketing scheme. And he takes advantage of trying to sell to any client that he meets, but he's literally got eyes for Kate. And Kate actually has no real interest in him at all, other than what he can do for her. And I was like, okay, cool. We're following a sociopath. We're following a Patrick Bateman type character. And she's someone who, and to your point, she lies, she cheats, she's doing everything that she can to get away because she's got this type of stigma about her that is very feminist and very ignorant, and you're not supposed to like her, but we're missing the cause of this effect, and we only get little tips of it here and there. Like later in the script, Kate runs into someone working at a kind of like a CVS, and the cashier's like, "Oh, I remember you. We had the same math class. You copied off my paper." And it's like, okay. And then that was completely moved away. And then you find out from two other gossipy kind of girls that, or women, because they're in their 20s, that somehow Kate stole money from a GoFundMe for something. And we don't know any more details of that, but we get those little hints that, she's not a good character who we're following. So we're following. And this is also an interesting aspect with a lot of writers, especially some that become a little bit more experienced, which is they want to tell a story of a villain. They don't want you to necessarily love them, but they want you to see a villain perspective, like on the villain's own type of heroic journey type of thing, but, the villain's journey, if you will. And I think this is what that script was trying to do. And the people that Kate interacts with, they all show a little bit of care, and they're also having their own stories, but Kate is so isolated from them and so focused on what she wants to do that she is a pain in the butt, and you're not going to be able to really empathize with her at all. In fact, you're not supposed to. It's kind of like the Columbo story, where Columbo just pops in and out, but we're following the criminal and all the things that they're doing to try and stay ahead of Columbo. Only in this case here, there's no one really investigating Kate.
Right. That's why Columbo works, because at least you have him investigating, so there's some kind of intrigue there.
And you've got some tension, right? And in this case here, Kate is... She's lying to her dad, and her dad's not a great guy either. He sits on the couch, he's watching television all the time, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, borrowing money from his daughter. He doesn't have a job. She's a neat freak. She doesn't eat much, so she's very thin, but she's got washboard abs. And she goes to the gym a lot. And there's a lot about who she is. We're just seeing her routine and what she does, but we don't understand why she's so upset. Why she's so obsessed with the gym and the yoga and burning calories and all that stuff. We don't understand why, because she's not interested in guys, and she's not interested in girls. All she's interested in is getting into Colombia so she can leave this Texas town.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Patrick Bateman, and I think that he's amusing. There's parts that even when he's killing somebody, when he's talking about music and all this kind of stuff, there's something funny. It's dark comedy, but I don't think there's anything in this script that really gives that dark comedy vibe.
No.
It's just you don't like this villain slash main character, but there's nothing going on that really draws you in. And now, if we were looking at Fargo, let's say, and let's say she's the bad character like William H. Macy, but then there's a character like Frances McDermott's police officer, then at least you had a police, like you said, Columbo, you had a quirky local town police officer investigating, trying to piece this together, running into like kind of a bunch of weirdos. Maybe there was somewhere where you could make it funny like the Coen brothers do, but I don't really understand what this movie is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be a dark comedy? Because I don't think there's one joke in here. And if it's just supposed to be kind of dark and that's it, like a dark indie, it sort of lowers the potential of what I think the screenplay in the movie could be, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, well, I wouldn't say it's a comedy, or at least an overt one, but it's definitely a commentary on millennial women. I mean, at least this type of millennial woman, the one that kind of emerged in the 2020s. The self-entitled, think they have this. I mean, she has this issue where we learn a little bit about her mother, who died of cancer. She's cremated, she's on an urn, and apparently her mom was very encouraging of her, as was her father, but her mother was a janitor at a school. And she spent her entire life kind of supporting the family while the husband did nothing at home. And that fostered a huge amount of resentment in Kate. And that's basically a life that she doesn't want to have. And she sees she sees the potential of that being her if she doesn't stay focused on the Columbia Law School. And what's kind of funny is that we have this, like, she's constantly checking message boards and stuff about being on the wait list and trying to get in. And her dad keeps on, knocking on her bedroom door saying, hey, do you want to go to like the gun range? Do you want to, go to, I think like the sushi buffet restaurant that they go to? Like he wants to reach out to her and give her time, but she's very resentful of him. And then he's just like, okay, we'll go back to studying, which I find kind of silly because what is there for her to study? She's not in school. She's already done her SATs. She's already done her application. She can't improve her grades at this point. She's 23, so she's applying as basically an adult to this program. So, like, what can she read? That she hasn't already read in the elapsed time since. She doesn't have access to the Columbia syllabus. She doesn't have access to the new textbooks that she would probably have to peruse. So she's just kind of, there's nothing for her to study. So all she can do is work and go to the gym and wait. And I thought this is an interesting aspect because this is what's frustrating her a lot. Is she's constantly getting rejection letters from all these other schools. And then she finally says, oh, well, we're not rejecting you. We're putting you on the wait list. So we will let you know if a spot opens up. And while she's perusing the wait list and waiting and going through her mundane life, which is a very sad life. It's not anything to really be envious of. She works at Subway restaurant. Her boss is 19 years old and is like a jerk. And
there's an element of the males kind of being jerks. I mean, she's also unlikable. They're unlikable, like you said. At the end, only that jock Chad guy, whatever his name is, only he seems to be somewhat likable a little bit because he's trying to be nice at least as the movie progresses.
Well, he's a nice and supportive guy. The thing, again, as I said at the start, like he comes when he's introduced. Kate is on the treadmill and she's running, trying to burn off like 300 calories or something, and he just comes up and he says, "Hey, do you mind if I do my exercise here?" And he's doing dips using the rails of the treadmills, and she's just like, "I don't care, whatever." And so he's doing it in front of her, clearly trying to impress her, like a gym rat would do, like a skeevy guy. And she just ignores him. She does her own thing. And when she goes out into the parking lot, where her little beat up car is, his Mustang is parked right up close so that she can't even open her car door. And so you're thinking, okay, so we're framing this guy as, a predator, right? Right. And then the writer says, no, he's not. And he shows and we see these situations where he's literally just a guy that's interested in her, wants to help when he's seeing problems, but he's not forcing himself on her. He's not being disrespectful. He's not trying to treat her like property or any of the things that a woman of this type would normally assume at the start. And I'm thinking, okay, if that's the way this writer's approaching it, then I understand what the dynamics are here. The dynamics is that she's making a commentary on Kate and the type of woman that Kate is, when there's people around her that's actually, not all of them are great, but they're not actually out to get her. Some are actually, presenting opportunities for her that Kate just refuses to take advantage of.
There's another issue that while you were just talking about all this that I thought of. That forum where all these ladies on the waiting list are all talking with each other doesn't come off as realistic to me. I think that a lot of times the college stuff is very private. Unless they had kind of avatars with phony names and they're just talking about it, maybe that could be okay. But that they would put their real names out there and talk about who accepted them to what. It feels like, a lot of times this college stuff is more private. And I don't know that all these ladies would be sitting around and posting this online.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird because, when I was getting to college, Facebook didn't exist, so there's no social network to coordinate with that, and in this case here, what we have is there's like a message board or a Facebook group of some sort where basically you're finding out like, yeah, people have applied to all these schools, and then someone says, oh my god, I'm on the wait list at Columbia and I just got in, they just accepted me, someone dropped out and I got accepted, and that's kind of what kicks off the plot
That
for
never
Kate.
happens. That never, in my opinion, if somebody was on the wait list, they wouldn't want to tell people to begin with. It's kind of like, you don't want to say it, especially if it's your real name in the forum. You don't want to say that you're on the wait list.
Right.
People don't want to get into Columbia. They want to say they got into Columbia. For them to tell all these other people that they're on the wait list is kind of not a good thing. You know what I mean? They don't want to share that. That all these people have egos. They're not going to share that they're on a wait list. And then finally, when they get they're removed from the wait list, they wouldn't go to the forum and say anything. They would say nothing at all, in my opinion. It's like, why are we going to this forum? The forum is people commiserating supposedly because they're not being accepted. But once you're accepted, you're going to go to the forum and say, hey, ladies, I got in. Screw you. I'll see you later. I don't think so. With your real name, I don't believe it.
Our generation, definitely not. But the generation that's being addressed in this script might
Maybe,
do that because that's how they're all it's all about the TikTok. Just this morning, I think I was on Twitter and someone shared a TikTok about a woman who's literally stalking a guy, like advertising that she's stalking a guy, and went inside his house. So yeah, I'm like, okay, it's hard to see if this script crosses the line of verisimilitude when you get situations like that. Because again, people are part of the social media popularity stigma is that you want to get traffic and support from complete strangers for some reason, and I think Kate fits into that generation essentially, where if she could, she would, but she's not the person that advertises. She's actually very private, and it's all the people around her that are advertising, like the two girls that she sees in the girls' locker room at the gym. They gossip, they talk, they're on their phones, they're rummaging through Kate's personal things. So it's like, okay, they're clearly, they have no sense of privacy where Kate actually does. And when she goes on to that message board, she finds out that this woman named Robin got off the wait list and got accepted to Columbia, and she does a quick background search on her. She realizes, oh, Robin's actually relatively close by. Maybe, she gets this idea of maybe just going to talk to her and seeing, hey, maybe you have other opportunities, because while she researches Robin, she finds out that she's been accepted to a whole bunch of other schools as well. And Columbia's not
Too convenient for me.
Well, no, I understand that, but that's kind of the gimmick of what this is that we have a section of girls, particularly girls, who have shared information that they should not be sharing on the internet. And
I understand what you're saying. It's trying to say this generation of twerps likes to do this kind of stuff, but I just don't know. Even the twerps now, I don't know if they would do that. But I'll accept what you're saying. That's what the writer was going for, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't like she had a long list to work from either. Like that's also what's kind of interesting, right? Is that it's only a handful of girls that are posting this information, and that is what facilitates Kate from actually following up. So in the first place here, the turning point is, Kate and Chad is pursuing Kate. He's courting her. She eventually sees I guess late one night, a bunch of kids in a parking lot, like 16, 17 years old. One of the girls is pregnant, but she's in love with the father of her baby. And for some reason, when that kid is like, possessive of her, Kate gets the idea of like, you know what, I'll entertain Chad. And she decides to, okay, I'll start a relationship with him. And then we find out why she does this. She does this so that she can actually use his car to drive to go find Robin and basically plead with her to like, please just reject the acceptance to Columbia, go to like Dartmouth or the other colleges that she was accepted to, so that someone like her, who's coming from, a no-name town and a bad family, not a great economy, she's been saving up money for years to pay for school, so that she could go. And Robin kind of flips out and lunges at Kate with a knife. And of course a scuffle occurs. Robin gets injured. And then we see, I thought, a dark chain of events, which is that Kate, instead of calling the ambulance or trying to help her, she just takes the knife out and she holds for a second, and then she just starts going psycho on her. Right like the shower sour sheen, just stabbing into her.
That's definitely a turning point in the movie for sure. Because until that moment, you're not sure if this is just some quirky. It's like a movie about a quirky girl that's going crazy. This already takes it to another level. This is, like you said, more like a Patrick Bateman situation where she's now, actually killing.
Yeah, and it's showing her drive, her obsession, the fact that, like, we know now at this point, great, she is definitely, like, this. The writer is conveying to us, this is not someone we're supposed to like. We're not supposed to empathize with her. She is over the edge. She's over the edge right now. She's killing this person, and she's doing it with the intention of getting off the wait list to get accepted to Columbia. And this happens at the end of the first act of the script. And when you see that happening, you realize obviously she's not going to get off the wait list from the single act.
Right.
And the thing that I think is kind of interesting is that we get a result of her working out constantly all the time, in the fact that she's able to kill Robin and then bag up her body, bleach everything, throw her in the back of the trunk, drive out of town, toss the body in a dumpster, and then basically return to Chad's place and try and pick up things as if nothing happened. And you're like, and the other part too is, again, she's attacking other girls that are relatively her same size. And so it's not like she's attacking guys and beating them up in the middle of an alley or anything of that nature. There's a level of verisimilitude in that regard. But what I find is interesting is how we really get to see how much of a sociopath she is as a result of that, when she's not really traumatized. She's kind of relieved by it, and then the only thing that's giving her anxiety is waiting to see if she's off the wait list.
Right.
So, I mean, I thought, well, I will say this, the setup, the way that things are described, the way that Robin, when we see her, and how she's kind of aloof and floozy, and she's talking about how the boyfriend that left earlier, they used to date, and he cheated on her, but now he's better. Like, we understand that, like, okay, she's not a good person either, but we also see a pattern of Robin is volunteering information, right? And we're kind of seeing, oh, okay, and then this kind of picks up again with the next character, because as Robin goes back home and checks to see if she's on the wait list, she doesn't get on the wait list. She doesn't get off the wait list, but a new girl pops in named Christina, who gets off the wait list and explains excitement and everything. And so Robin kind of goes through the same thing, the same methods again, but Chad and Robin are getting a bit more intimate. They're spending a bit more time with each other. To Kate, not really a chagrin, but just kind of a cold, just using him type of thing. And now when she goes to leave again, Chad kind of catches her. He's like, where are you going? Like, what are you doing? It's like 11 o'clock at night. And she's now got to come up with excuses and lies. And what would you think about the dynamic as, like, Chad is getting more involved in the life and in her life, and what she's trying to balance between these two?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that was something that worked, that he was actually trying to be her boyfriend and she's a weirdo. That actually was an interesting aspect. but even so, I felt that it still wasn't enough to hold my attention. Maybe there could have been more comedy there. The fact that he wanted to be this kind of boyfriend and she didn't. If the character said things that were funnier, maybe made these kind of funny comments, then I would have maybe said, okay, this is that type of movie. But instead, she just acted like her annoying self, and it's kind of just whatever for me.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the gimmick. But like one of the things I'm wondering about with you is like, did you get the idea of how and why she was kind of taking advantage of Chad, and did you have any sort of empathy for Chad, who hasn't really picked up on the fact that he's being used?
That's the only character in the movie that you kind of feel bad for at some point because he's such an idiot and she keeps taking his car and doing all this terrible stuff and she's just completely using him. Although there is a moment where she seems actually jealous. Maybe it's an ego thing
Mm-hmm.
that when he's talking to that other girl, it actually seems to annoy her. That's a moment that you actually see, even if it's her emotions are weird and it's for the wrong reasons, but it actually bothers her that some other girl is moving in on her guy. uh, that actually is interesting.
So yeah, this actually comes. So let's talk a little bit about Christina, because this is where we do get one thing where I feel like a scene is missing, and that is when she tracks down Christina, and she realizes that Christina is this really helpful, kind of very approachable, outgoing person, and she follows Christina to her house. She then sees Christina get into her car and forget her coffee, and then she drives, and then Christina drives off. And then the next scene, we're on the highway, and Kate has pulled over and then fallen out of the Mustang, pretending to have a seizure, and Christina, like sees this, stops her car, gets out to help, and then that's when Kate grabs her, and I'm like, well, how did we get to this situation? Like that's one of the bigger flaws I saw. Like I felt like a scene was missing here. Like, where's the suspense? Where's the whole, she's following her on the highway. She goes into the fast lane. She gets up in front of her. She maintains that for a bit. And then she does, the techniques needed into a car to try and get, Christina's attention, ideally, so that she can, capture her, kill her, and then dispose of her body.
Yeah,
That'll help
it
the little
wasn't well
jarring.
written.
Yeah.
It was almost like I guess they were trying to show, oh, it's business as usual. Now you saw what she did before, so she's just gonna kill her now, and like they didn't invest any time to kind of flesh it out. They're just like, here she is, she's killing her. Uh, Now it's kind of just business as usual.
Yeah. It's basically like now this is becoming a habit.
Right.
And I was like a little bit sad because the tension was kind of pulled out of there. Like I liked the tension with Robin and her earlier on, because the framing of the scene was that she's there to plead her to get out, and then it's Robin that escalate things that allows for her to kind of unlock this killing spree that she goes on. And I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. That's a nice, interesting cause and effect. And it also makes me wonder, like, is this the type of perception that Kate has with every problem that she faces, where she goes in thinking that she's trying to do one part, but then a reaction from the other person causes an escalation that she then takes further, and then still blames them for that initial escalation when she's the one that actually really ramped up the stakes and ramped up the issues. So that was kind of swirling around in my head, and one thing that was kind of disappointing about the script is that we never really got any answer to that. Like, we see the pattern of behavior from girl to girl, victim to victim, but we don't see any of the other stuff. For instance, when she's working at Subway and her boss, Leo, who again is like this high school guy, is, cutting her hours and telling her to be more cheerful and better behind the counter. And when Chad comes in to basically buy 3 chicken breasts on a bun, Leo comes in and says, you can't do a family or friends thing or any of that stuff there. He's got to pay the full price, which is like $20 for 3 chicken breasts from a Subway. And he's just like, oh, Chad's just like, he takes it. He's like, okay, if that's what it is. And he goes to sit down, and that's where the jealousy part comes in. That's where this rather vivacious woman named Molly, who has a Mustang just like Chad's, comes in, orders, sits down, and what I thought was funny is that Chad just gets up, goes right over to talk, but we don't all hear exactly what he's saying, but you kind of get the idea that he's actually more interested in just selling her his protein power from his multi-level marketing scheme than he is about actually pursuing her romantically. But from Kate's perspective, she's easily threatened by this woman.
Right. And I think it's interesting in that part, which I was saying before, that she actually, for whatever reasons this bothers her, maybe not from reasons of really having feelings for him, but still this kind of feeling that she's in her territory and she doesn't like that. It's interesting that at this point she's actually willing to take action. But this action also raises questions within the screenplay. The fact that she threatened this girl, I don't think that this girl would just never say anything to anybody. I think that encounter would later become relevant. Not to mention, I know the two kids, whatever, they were stoned, but there was that other encounter. I feel like I understand how this movie is sort of cooking the plot up, but I feel like it leaves a lot of sort of questions for me later as to how exactly everything works out the way it does.
Yeah, there's some issues there. Like when she uses her techniques to find Molly and tracks her down and learns a couple of things about Molly that seem pretty plausible. Wherever she works, Molly's clearly sleeping with her boss, who's married with kids, and she uses that to kind of intimidate Molly and be like, "Hey, stay away from Chad." And Molly's all like, "Listen, I know I'm hot and whatever, but yeah, I'm not gonna do anything." And literally, Kate like takes out a knife, ready to stab her, and then she stops herself. And Molly is freaked out, and whatever Kate is doing, it really does shake her. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of funny, but it makes me ask, like, okay, why not just take her out, right? Like, but there's nothing stopping her at this point. But for Kate's logic, and this is where the first time we kind of get a little bit inside her head, for Kate's logic, it's like, this is not the plan. And it just kind of was like, threw me a little bit, because I'm wondering, okay, if the plan is to get off the wait list, get into Colombia, and she's using Chad's Mustang to do that, she needs to maintain the relationship with Chad for that to happen. And if Molly is a threat to that, whether or not Chad will do it or not, why not just cover all of her, hedge her bets, so to speak, and just
Right.
get rid of her there, right? Like
Plus,
that's the logical.
leaving her as a loose end could only be a problem, and the fact that I feel like it's not even addressed later is an issue. Another question I have for you is, I mean, I understand that within the script nobody cares about this, but there could be 1,000 people on a wait list. She can't go and take out every single one of them. So, I mean, this I understand you could say, well, she's kind of delusional and crazy, but even so. This kind of makes her stupid, in addition to being delusional and crazy, which is kind of weird if you're on a wait list to go to Colombia, where you would be that dumb. But hey,
Well,
what do I know?
This makes me wonder, with all those other clues that are dropped in the script, is that are her SATs legit? Did she cheat on her SATs to get into Colombia? Did she cheat to get the grades in high school that she's using, or as applying as a mature student? There's different qualifications that are required. You don't need the same thing as what you need when you get straight out of high school. So that's one of the things I really wish we got a little bit more clarity on, which is that how smart is she actually? Like, could she legitimately be a good lawyer, or is she legitimately a good student and it's her other flaws that are holding her back? Or is she completely fake all the way through? Like,
if she was a con woman, like you just said, and that was her thing, I'd love to have seen more conning and some kind of character. If at least you kind of look at her and she makes you chuckle while she's conning, there's something that you kind of, in some satirical way, and I was mentioning natural born killers. I don't know why that pops into my mind. They kill people, but somehow there's a feeling of a bit of comedy, a dark comedy while they do it. Then at least you kind of go along with it, even though obviously you don't want to kill people and you don't think that's good, but you kind of go along with it. That's missing from this movie. It's like, show me who she is, all the cons, make us like her, at least as a con woman. Kind of be like a Saul Goodman. I think somebody mentioned that here in the chat. It's kind of like a Saul Goodman or something. Give me something to work with. And I feel like this movie, at every turn, fails to do this. And it's really the biggest issue. I could overcome a lot of nonsense like the waiting list and the illogic and the ladies putting their names and all this stuff, and the Molly not taking action or going to the police. A lot of that stuff I can accept, but the fact that there's not even any kind of humor or something intriguing about the main character is a mistake that I can't overlook.
Yeah, there's definitely something missing there, because I would argue we're seeing more effects and not enough causes to understand those effects and why they're what they are. I mean, even the stuff with her dad and how much of a slob he is and how he spends the money that his daughter makes on meth. And I like the fact that, even though we're seeing it through Kate's narrative, but even though her dad watches like Fox News on loud volume and stuff, every time Kate talks, he mutes the TV so he can listen to her, but he doesn't actually really listen to her. Like, that's the other part too. Like, he does things out of like a habit, and you're expecting him to be, a cliched, red-blooded Republican, blah blah blah, all that stuff, and he's not any of those things. He's not any of the other things either. He's just a guy that lounges around, goes to the gun range, drinks a lot of beer, smokes his cigarettes, and does some meth, and borrows money from his daughter to fill up his truck. Which it's funny that he constantly has to put gas in his truck, because I'm wondering, well, where the heck is he going all the time? He's not going to a job, and it's not until in the second act where he gets an offer for a job, and Kate's like, okay, that's cool, that's nice, but can you do the job? You're not exactly healthy, and you're doing meth, and you don't think they're going to drug test you for that? And he's just completely like, absent-minded professor in this situation. He doesn't put them all together, which I thought, okay, so this is what she's dealing with. All right, I can understand resentment to him and not wanting to be stuck in a relationship or life like that, but I need a little bit more. Like, we do get points where she's looking online and seeing like a female lawyer that I guess she idolizes, but we get so little of that hero from her perspective that it doesn't resonate strongly enough for us to understand that this is who she wants to be, this is who she idolizes, and we don't really see much of why, right? Like, it's very, very thin in that regard, as a plot point.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of where I was at with her character there, because you're absolutely right. She should be tying up the loose ends with Molly. Molly is a threat to her, to what she's doing. The only type of tension we see after that point is when she kind of drives back towards Chad's, and she sees the cop car out front. And it turns out, like, the news has started to pick up on what they call the Columbia killer, because the police have made a connection that Robin and Christina, the only things they had in common is that they were Columbia students that had recently got off the wait list to be an applicant, to actually be a student at the university. And so the only common piece of evidence that the authorities know from all the reports is that there was a blue Mustang nearby. And what we end up getting is there's two cops in Chad's condo interviewing him, while as Kate comes in and kind of observes the interview. And the cops are jerks. Like, they're bullying Chad, like, implying that he was a loser and, a creep and probably a gay and all that stuff. But now he's dating a woman, a younger woman that's like 12, 13 years younger than Chad, because Chad's like 35, and he's dating a 23-year-old. So the cops are all really impressed by that. But they are kind of like bullying him. And then Kate doesn't really defend or do anything or comment on how the cops were really treating him. And when they leave, he's just like, yeah, they're guys from high school, they suck, whatever. And then he just starts thinking about her. He's like, so how are you doing? Like, we got this weird Columbia thing. I know you're going to that. Are you not worried? And she's like, no, I'm okay. and he's genuinely worried about her, to the point where he's like, maybe you should just move in with me, because I can protect you, I can take care of you. And that kind of gets to Kate a little bit, because that starts making her wonder, okay, if she does that, her life is over. She's not going to Columbia. She's probably going to get married, have kids, take care of her husband, and not have a life, and that's kind of what really frightens her. And I wish we had a little bit more of why that frightens her, like, right? Because it's
Even if she was kind of this toxic feminist and they really leaned into it and made it funny or anything, I would have accepted, because there's a part that she's like, he's just going to want you to have kids. You're never going to be able to pursue your dreams. So I get that they're trying to make her this way. I mean, there was a way to make it work. I guess that's what I was saying at the beginning. There was something that you could have made it work. If it was aware of the kind of satire that it's going for, if it was more built on satire, and it had something that you look at it and even chuckle at times. You know, recently I'm thinking of that movie Megan with the doll.
right.
That movie had moments that I was kind of laughing. You know what I mean? It's silly, it's preposterous, but there was something going on there that at least got some laughs out of me, because there was some kind of satire going on there about artificial intelligence, about reliance on technology, about different things. So you kind of, this character of this doll is intriguing, and she's doing bad things, but it's kind of interesting. But in this case, they just don't lure you in. There's moments where it shows that they could have lured you in, that maybe there was something about her that they could have done, like you said about the conning and about copying exams. Show her as this more kind of like layered and complicated character, that her whole life has been kind of having to be put in very difficult situations, making her this kind of difficult character the way she is. But by the time that she's killing all these ladies, you kind of not that you want her to do it, but you kind of understand why she's doing it, because you're rooting for her to get out of this town or anything. But I feel like the script never accomplishes that, and
Well, I think
it's just
yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think it's because you're coming at this as the protagonist needs to be likable, which is your default rule anyways. Like that's generally the good rule that you want to have with your story. But everything that this script does is deliberately trying to make you not like the antagonist, like the protagonist at all. But I think it's lacking in the sense that you still need to understand this antagonist in the same details you would understand a protagonist in this situation from this point of view. Like when you have, say, a character like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, we understand that why he wants to leave the planet. He doesn't have many of his friends anymore. We find out from Aunt Beru, so most of his friends are gone. He's stuck on the farm. Every time he brings up trying to leave, his uncle comes up with an excuse, playing in on his compassion and sense of responsibility to stay, and he just feels like he's not going anywhere. Like we see a cause and effect here. We see he wants to go, and his family in the world is trying to anchor him down. We don't get anything like that with Kate. We see that she wants to go, but her father's like, yeah, I hope you do go. And her boyfriend is like, yeah, I hope you do go. And everybody is that, is in a position to care about her, is very encouraging of her. No one's trying to hold her back. But I think the commentary is the fact that she is feeling like their encouragement is what is trying to hold her back, which is basically a sense of cognitive dissonance to the world around her, where she is a nutball. And she's looking at the world through a very skewed lens, and she's behaving in a way that you, I, and many other people in the world have seen horrible people behave before. But I think, to your point, there's something extra lacking there, where we're just like, well, how do we connect those dots to understand how she got to this point, right?
Or at minimum, like I said with the Fargo, if there was a plot that also you see a police officer trying to, like maybe a character, the kind, like I said, you see in a Coen Brothers movie, somebody who's kind of interesting, and he's trying to bumble his way through this investigation, and he can't put the parts together, and maybe he has quirky things going on in his life, then at least it's sort of like a battle of the minds between this kind of incompetent police officer and this sneaky lady. At least you have something, and you're like, okay, this is interesting. But
Right.
they don't have the additional element. It's as if there was one thing, one factor, one element that's missing from this screenplay for it to have really a real effect, on me at least.
And I think it's to your point, it's the fact that we don't necessarily have a solid antagonist to her, anyone that can actually threaten her chance at achieving her goal. Like, because again, she's coming from the villain angle. Like, if we were to see this story from Robin, it would be, we'd empathize with Robin. We'd then see Kate come in. They'd have a scuffle. she'd be killed, or she'd have to fight her off and win and then go to Colombia and be happily ever after. That would be the typical stuff. But we're getting the inverse of that. But where's the additional threat to Kate, right? Like where's the cop circulating her? Where's the dean of admissions kind of not taking her calls or not responding to her emails or any of that, or telling her to wait to next year, or where are all the other obstacles for her, right? Like there's no real obstacle other than time. And this made me think of the movie Juno, which is not a movie I like, because in that case, the main character of Juno, when she discovers she's pregnant, she immediately says, okay, I'm going to give this kid up for adoption. So now we're waiting for her to carry the child to term, give birth, and hand it over. And all the things that happen in between are just vignettes. They don't mean anything. They don't really do anything. They're primarily there to facilitate Jason Bateman wanting to leave Jennifer Gardner's character. And it's just kind of empty. It's a really, I find it to be a really empty movie, even though so many people gave it accolades at the time. I'm like, this is not really a movie itself. Like all the conflicts are solved in the first 10-15 minutes, and now we're just playing the waiting game.
It's a classic. That movie that you said, Juno, is a classic kind of fart-sniffing indie that the critics will give good accolades to. But then after a year or two, you just think that movie was just dumb, and it doesn't really leave a mark. A lot of times that actually happens, where they have a movie that season that they're so excited that it seems trendy and cool that they like it, but then when you think about it, it was just some turd. So I think that Juno is kind of like that.
See, I think what would have been a good twist in this film is because we have the third victim, which is Camilla. And I think it would have been funny is if, as Kate is trying to set up to take out Camilla, another girl is there to do the exact same thing. We find out that there's more than one person with the same plot.
Yes, that would have been funny. Another thing that would have been good, and another thing that could have been interesting, if let's say, how in Pulp Fiction you see things from John Travolta's perspective, you see things from Bruce Willis' perspective.
The Rashomon effect,
Right, and then you kind of see them meet up, and then it jumps back and forward in time. If this movie had, let's say, like a Robin character and this Kate character, and they each have their own lives, and they're both kind of quirky and weird, and at the end it's like a battle, even of like two unlikable, like quirky, weirdo, annoying ladies, at least there's something. There's like a battle between them, something, you know what I mean? That brings to this climax. But here, it's just she just arrives, does the thing, and leaves. It's just like you said before. We were saying it was like business as usual. It's almost too easy.
Well, it's. I will say this: I find it kind of believably easy the way that she kills these women because they are daft, and then a part of me is thinking like, wow, these ladies got into Colombia, and then when you read recent news articles covering applicants of Columbia, covering the admission staff and the actual staff, and you're like, yeah, I guess Ivy League colleges aren't what they used to be. So,
I mean, there's a lot of dumb things that happen in Ivy League colleges these days, but still, even so, something about this whole situation doesn't ring true, and
it feels very much of today. That's the other part that kind of I think hurts it.
Right. It feels like whoever wrote it, and I don't know her, she herself is a modern woman that was trying to do this in a modern woman way. And I think that ultimately that's what tanks something that could have been an interesting idea. I feel like on paper, she probably thought the person that wrote this thought this is a cool idea. And I'm not 100% against it. I'm not saying that there wasn't potential here. If somebody would have pitched it to me, or I feel like if you and I were sitting together and they pitched it to us, we would have come up with so many ideas to make it more interesting. Whereas she just went with her gut and just said, this is good. But nobody at any point kind of stopped and said, hey, maybe you want to consider an additional draft here and develop a few things here more than you did.
Yeah, or at least try and, as I said earlier, inject an actual antagonist. Because I mean, the way that it's written, because again, this is the weird part. It's well crafted, like no spelling mistakes, great imagery in the action lines, dialogue is pretty solid. Like all the characters have their own unique voice.
Agreed.
All the good things are there. It's just missing that element that makes this a more engaging film. And I think one of the things that kind of hurts it is the fact that the father's not much of any antagonist to Kate Scholes. Chad is not an antagonist to Kate Scholes at all. So where's where's the obstacle aside from just checking off the women that got off the wait list and got accepted until her name comes up? Like, where's the actual obstacle? Like, we get a ticking clock, but it's not really well defined, so we don't care.
I feel like I don't know the name of this lady that wrote the screenplay, but I feel like her biggest disadvantage is that we weren't there to supervise her work. You know what I'm saying? I feel like if we were there, we could have said, "Listen, your descriptions are good. You have an idea here that's not bad. Let's work together in making this better." And I think that with like proper guidance and tutelage from us.
Well, I mean, it's just even
throwing. She could have done better.
Well, it's just throwing back an idea or two. Like Carly J. Hallman is the writer, and I mean, if she ever finds this podcast and listens to it, I'm gonna say I would not be adverse to ever reading another script from her again. I actually would. I enjoyed reading this, even though I felt there are some areas that needed more development.
Yes, it didn't feel amateurish. It didn't feel. I will say, I thought that the descriptions were good, and she had certain things that she wanted to do, and she was getting her point across. Like I felt that this thing was playing in my mind like a movie.
Right.
And in that sense, I feel like we read some screenplay. I think the last time we did one together. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I think that one actually had a lot of mistakes in it, a lot of grammatical errors, or a lot of descriptions that were weird. Whereas here, it feels like there's a woman who is professional at writing a screenplay. She thinks that she's a better storyteller than she is.
I don't know if it's that so much. I just think that she let this particular idea get a little bit away from her. Because I didn't get any sense of pretension from her story. Like, that's the other part, too.
I'll retract some of my douchiness. I
no, it's okay. It's okay.
I think that she has potential, but I just think that she needs to get out of her own way a little. Maybe another screenplay, like you said. Maybe another screenplay. She'll continue to improve her skills. She'll be kind of more mature in her storytelling, and she'll realize maybe the mistakes of this one. Maybe at this point, this one is just she's too set on it the way it is, so she can't fix it. So maybe the next time she comes up with one, she'll be able to, overcome some of these obstacles. Although, what I've seen a lot of times in Hollywood, when we see these kind of Rian Johnsons and all the whatever, they never overcome. They always, whatever they do, they continue to do over and over again, in my opinion. J.J. Abrams or whatever.
Well, there is an assumption there, like assuming that she wouldn't want to rewrite this. Like, I don't know that, right? There's no way for us to know that yet, unless she comes out says that she would never rewrite this.
I hope she's listening to this program right now, and if she is, I think you should rewrite it. I don't know what her name is, but lady, you should rewrite this thing.
Well, I think just add in an actual antagonist. I think that'll do wonders for it, like a legit one.
What was her name, by the way? I'm again. I feel like I'm douche.
Carly Hallman is the writer's name.
Carly Hallman. So yeah, potential is there. Do a rewrite. Maybe there's something. Maybe it could be salvaged.
Well, I mean, salvaged I think would be too strong a term, but it definitely would give it that extra push because again, this is in the top 10 of the blacklist for 2021. So a lot of producers really liked this screenplay. And I will say
for all the wrong reasons. They liked it because it probably, unfortunately, some of those kind of feminist narratives or whatever, they thought wouldn't be that this be cool. It's a woman that's kind of had it, it's falling down, but with a young feminist toxic weirdo. Maybe that's what they thought about it, or hoping that that's what it was.
Maybe.
And I feel like if they were considering it, it wasn't for the right reasons, in my opinion.
I don't know. Well, I looked at it as basically like saying this writer is making fun of the Karen. Like that's the way I saw it. It's like because again, everything that she does is evil. She's not a likable character. The story, the writer is not trying to make her likable at all, and that's the other part too. Like that's a bigger difference when you get these other writers that are trying to do like the female empowerment stuff. They're trying to make the entire world bend to the will and say that she's a great character and try and frame a false sense of empathy to their main character. But in Kate, we don't have any empathy to her. Like even when she goes through certain things that would be otherwise known as emotional, because again, there's stuff that happens in the final act that we can't discuss because that would be a spoiler. But we learn that she literally has no heart, and that is deliberately done. Like it's Carly saying, you are not supposed to like this woman. She herself probably doesn't like this woman, and she wants to make sure that you don't like her. And I
You
think
know
it's
what?
also the idea is the fact that she uses the fact that she is a woman to take advantage of people around her.
Maybe, I just something occurred to me. Maybe Carly, the screenwriter, was trying to straddle the fine line between making fun of like these kind of feminist, toxic weirdo girl, and also not upsetting the studios that want to champion these type of women. So
Could
it's
be.
sort of it comes out that she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. And maybe that's why this thing ultimately doesn't work. It's just a thought that she didn't go all in either category. Either it's a satire that this is a wacky Karen and she's all in on it and the audience is all in on it and we're kind of chuckling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one option. Or that she's totally, serious and whatever it is in the other direction and it's like some weird horror thing or whatever. But I feel like she never really takes a position. She wants to be kind of neutral in the way she tells the story. And by being indecisive, the screenplay, in my opinion, ultimately falls apart. Even though a lot of it works, but the
You
some
thought she was
key in,
neutral in that? Because I didn't get the sense that she was neutral.
I don't. It's either it's satire and it's funny and you're going all in, or something else. There's an ingredient here that's missing,
Hmm.
and that ingredient is super important. We've given a lot of options. You mentioned that if there was a competing, let's say there were two girls like looking at the computer trying to kill women, I think that would be intriguing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then you see them like meet up together. That there's two of them. That's wacky. That's sort of insanity that you even forgive a lot of nonsense that the screenplay does because you understand that it's going for some kind of satire and nuttiness. But the fact that they don't have the two women, that they don't have the different multiple perspectives, that they don't have the police officer bumbling guy, that there's no antagonist, that it's just this lady, and at the end it feels kind of how do I explain? What's the word that I'm looking for? That it doesn't have an edge. You know what I mean? It's kind
Hmm.
of just if she was going for this Karen thing, there's no edge here. There's no edge in the writing of this character.
No, there isn't. But without getting, I mean, again, I will say the reason why I think it does kind of work.
Milk toast.
Yeah,
Yes.
milk toast. That'd be the word. The reason why I think it kind of does work a little bit at the satire, without spoiling it, is at the very end when she tries to start her car and it doesn't start.
Yeah,
Because
after
that's a
after
very
watching this
deliberate
whole
thing.
yes, yes, that's the final thing. But you know what? After suffering through a movie like this, at the end to have 1 second of something that's sort of satirical, it's too little, too late. You know what I
Well,
mean? I
I don't
agree
know
with
if
you.
it's. Well, I mean, the thing is, it's a bit more prominent on the satire than any of the other stuff. Like that's the biggest gimmick of satire is that the concept is you don't realize it's satire until you get towards the end. I mean, the most famous satirical piece ever is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, and it's framed up to start quite normal as with regards to the famine that's going on, and then he introduces the idea of cooking babies, and makes all these very coherent arguments for it, but they're very, very silly. And as they escalate more and more, it then goes towards the very end where he's like, well, unfortunately, I and my wife cannot participate as we are beyond childbearing age. So, I mean, that's kind of like the point. But, I mean, when that was published, there was a great deal of the population that did not understand that was satire. And that is kind of how you have to understand satire, especially in the modern age, is that because we're so strongly interconnected with everybody through social media and the internet, it's a lot more difficult to determine which is satire and which is just plain old real life absurdity, because the internet has basically presented to us a very unfiltered view of what the real world is like to a degree, where there are crazy people, where there are people that do obscene and ridiculous things. And instead of it just being localized to the one story every couple of years in the local paper or on the local news network, it's every story everywhere on the planet fed to you every day. And it kind of causes a disillusion.
I could see that.
It's just one thing to kind of like put into it. Now, do I think that she did the satire as effectively as she could? If this is the case, the satire, no. I think I think the lack of an antagonist basically diminishes any satirical effect that you would have in this type of thing. And now, if she were doing something more akin to American Psycho, again, you would need the Jared Leto character as the antagonist. That's kind of just getting under Patrick Bateman's skin up until he
Right.
finally,
Right.
takes him out. And the thing is that unfortunately we don't get enough of the victims, the Robin, the Christina, the Molly, the Camilla, for them to eat, because I feel like Carly was trying to slot those in as an antagonist for each section of the script, but we don't get enough of them, and we don't get enough of seeing them being a threat to her for us to actually be able to say, okay, we can recognize that as the antagonist. We can recognize that as an obstacle that Kate is going to have to really work hard to overcome. It just gets, as soon as he kills Robin, we then get to Christina. Christina's murder is done very, very quickly. We then do Molly. Molly's the threat that she lets go, which is a loose end, which, again, we both agree is a red flag. And then when we get to Camilla, the way that she gets into Camilla, she poses as like an Uber Eats driver and is providing like study food for her. And Camilla just lets her in, and then we cut from that to basically Kate dragging her body towards the Mustang. And so we're like, okay, if you're disposing of these antagonists this quickly, then we as an audience member, as readers, can't technically acknowledge these characters as antagonists because they're not enough of a threat at this point.
Right, it's business. It's very quickly business as usual. The only point is the first one, the Robin one. There's sort of that turn of events, but from that moment, they never really continue to build it up. And yes, I really liked your idea of her trying to get another one and running into another woman who was the same thing. That would have been. It kind of feels like there's something about Mary or something, but I like it. It's at least quirky and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just some of the stuff you kind of have to explore when you're seeing something that's kind of lacking. It's like, okay, well, what's lacking? Well, we've determined it in this show. The character of Kate is lacking an actual threatening antagonist, someone that could literally stop her. Like another option for an antagonist would be, say, a bank officer who would be helping her with a student loan or something, or denying her any line of credit or student loan so she could pay to go to Columbia, even though she hasn't gotten to Columbia yet. She's like, I got to figure out a way to get past this person. So even though she's picking off the applicants to get close to Columbia, maybe you have the banker antagonist saying, well, I'm not going to give you a line of credit or a student loan for Columbia because you haven't gotten into Columbia yet. And then she gets off the wait list and she gets to go, and then maybe she goes back and he's like, okay, you're in, but you work at Subway, you don't make much an hour, your dad's unemployed, you don't have any collateral. Why would we risk investing in you to go to Columbia to get that money back? And so it's like, okay, well, now I got to get rid of this guy to find another guy that can authorize my loan, right? Like, so you have you have to have something in there as your.
There's absolutely nothing. I mean, technically, I would think that, at the school itself, there would be like a financial aid type of executive that you're trying to get the school to maybe give you financial aid. But again, then at that point, she's on the wait list, so maybe it's a little complicated to do that because you would have to be accepted.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can't do the advanced paperwork if you're not in, right?
So maybe she kills somebody like Robin, and then she actually makes it in, and then the financial officer of Columbia doesn't want to give her the thing, and she runs into resistance with the financial aid department, and then, another. I don't know what happens there, but
then you have the ticking clock, right? Because if you can't pay your tuition and you can't go, you're bumped off, and then someone else from the wait list goes in to replace, right?
Right.
So then you'd have to go through the cycle again. So then that actually make it a bit more gimmicky, where it's like she keeps on getting bumped off and she keeps on killing the people that take her place on the wait list to the point where Columbia's like, well, the only spot we have left. We have one spot left and there's no other applicants, so it's you or nothing. But the financial aid officer, dean of admissions, banks are just like, we're not going to give you the money to do this. So then that's where she has to kind of figure out another plan. So I mean, there you have something that's basically Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill, right? Is it Sisyphus? I think it's Sisyphus.
Maybe she needs a guarantor for her loan, and she tries to get Chad.
Sure.
To sign, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that. And then she manipulates him. These are we're just brainstorming here. I don't know if any of these ideas are good in the big picture, but I just know that whatever exists in this screenplay is not enough.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like at best 75% there, because we've got the victims in place, we have the motivation in place, we need a better cause for the motivation, but we also need a better obstacle overall. So
yes.
With that in mind, Price,
in my opinion, a more interesting main character in the sense that give her some kind of edge, which they think she's edgy, but there's something missing here to make her either amuse me or interest me, or something about her just never really grabs me. It never really says I really want to know more about her.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the little clues we get, they're not tangible enough to paint the picture of intrigue that's would be otherwise required. It's like getting a throwaway line that she cheated off a paper, getting a throwaway line that she stole money from a crowdfunding um, campaign for cancer treatment. That's two. You need a third, right? You need something else, and then you also have to be able to paint the dots a little better. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I would say those things are missing. So I guess with that being said,
If the
Price.
movie starts off that she's conning somebody already right off the bat, she's like doing this big con. Do something. I don't know what. It's just like, she's in
And
the gym, she's
she's
sweating,
got a
whatever.
perfect
Who
opportunity
cares?
to do it with the multi-level marketing scheme that Chad's doing. Like he's
Right. That
selling
was
protein
another.
powder. Why isn't she just like, okay, I could do that, and
Right. Yeah, maybe she starts gaining popularity, even though she's like the biggest psychopath. People actually like her on Instagram selling this stupid powder. You know what I mean? That's an interesting story. Like she's the biggest, like terrible person, but she's selling this powder,
to pay
and
for
she
school. Yeah,
completely hates it and thinks it's the dumbest pyramid scheme ever. But her Instagram is blowing up, and she hates everybody. That's funny to me. You know what I mean? That's interesting. It's intriguing. Something here is missing. There were so many parts of this puzzle that a lot of them could have been twisted in one way or another, and they all end up, and it's like the word before that I said, it's kind of milk toast. It never really decisively leans into some kind of edgy idea or concept. It never has that X factor. And like you said, it's 75% there. Uh, I'm not just dismissing it. I'm not saying, oh, this is complete garbage. This could never be anything. I'm saying there's something here, but nobody ever stopped to talk with this Carly lady and explain to her that she needs to do a second draft.
well, we don't know. Again, she needs to go back to update this script. So with that
Back to
said,
formula.
not necessarily back to formula. She needs to just revise a section of this script. So
I wanted to say back to formula because I thought of Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. I've always wanted to say back to formula. Finally, I got my chance.
well, all right. Well, with that being said, Price, what is your rating of this script? Is this a green light or a pass?
Okay, and it's like the complex answer that I gave last time. If you told me that this movie you could do it for a budget of $1 million, and you got somebody like that men find appealing or anything, like you get Sydney Sweeney or something to appear in it and look really great in it, and it's like for $1 million, it could be something that you could do some kind of indie movie at some festival or whatever. Maybe you could fool people into watching it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be great, but maybe there's a way. Maybe she could bring some charm to it or something like that. But if you don't have something like that going on, and you want a legitimate budget, and you think this is a real movie, then no, I'm absolutely not green lighting it. Not before another. I don't want to say second draft. This could be the 10th draft, but if this is the 10th draft, it needs the 11th one. Not before changes are implemented and the screenplay is improved.
Yeah, I have to give it a pass as well. A reluctant pass because again, all the characters have a strong voice. Writing level of it is top notch. It's just missing. It's missing that element of a consistent antagonist that she has
It
to
has
find ways to
potential.
overcome. But yeah, it's got a lot of potential. Uh, if there is an updated, revised draft of that, I would have no hesitation reading it. There's that's the other
I
part
would
too.
too. I would too, and I would really hope that she would fix the issues because there was something here, but it just like you said, 75% there, but 75% there still isn't 100%, and if you're
Right.
not 100%, then what can you do?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we pretty much exhausted everything else we could really address onto this part without going into spoilers. But I will give it one thing is that I was very intrigued and I completely understand why computer producers like this script because it's deliberately supposed to be a character you're not supposed to like, and I think it's kind of making fun of the producers that want the strong, powerful woman, and I think she's the writer's being unapologetic in making the strong, powerful woman a villain. Like,
Not enough, not enough though. Something she doesn't do it all the way. You're right. There could be something here, but it's not decisive enough for me.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. With that, that's about it. There's not really much more to say. So, Price, let those listening know where can we find you outside of this show.
Well, there's the YouTube channel Price of Reason, where there's usually videos about pop culture news, entertainment reviews, things like that. And then there's Price of Reason Live, a newer channel where you and I, every week get together with a few friends and we do classic rewatches of the original Quantum Leap series from 1989. So people may enjoy that. That's a cool thing that we do. And I think that people should check it out. That's on Price of Reason Live on the live channel.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us this evening. Have a wonderful weekend. If you've enjoyed this show, if this is the first time watching, please consider signing up to the Patreon at patreon.com/scriptdoctor, where you will be able to see not just reviews of screenplays and my own musings of things with regards to the entertainment industry, but you also get recordings of this show. You'll get to see what type of scripts we'll be reviewing on this show a week ahead of schedule, in addition to commenting that we will read here live on the show as well. And bonus episodes. In fact, February is a busy month, so we'll probably have 2 bonus episodes this month to make up for that. So feel free to check that out. It does come with a 1-week free trial at the base tier, and the base tier gets you access to this show and the library itself. So please consider showing some support there if you so can. If not, no harm, no foul. With that being said, have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.